unless you are financially sustainable, you cannot scale. The best appropriate model given India's context is always a blended, a physical model. And that is how we believe we will be in a position to scale up our initiatives at the same time without losing the focus on impact that comes by way of facilitation and personal engagement.
So today we have with us Mr. RCM Reddy, who is the Managing Director and CEO of Schoolnet India Limited and in charge of the delivery of education, employability, and employment initiatives under multi-stakeholder partnerships format. He has led the organization in demonstrating scalable models for improving learning outcomes in K-12 education through digital and digitally assisted education solutions, teachers training, and other services, impacting more than 40,000 schools and 15 million students and teachers. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Reddy. It's a pleasure to have you today.
Thank you very much, Deepak.
And to start with the conversation, so can you elaborate on the broader framework and the philosophy around which the organization works and has been established?
Thank you very much, Deepak. First of all, having me at your CSR box and the CSR talks that series that I've been having is very, very useful, I must say. I have been to see some of the talks. My compliments to CSR box.
Thank you.
The overall framework around which we operate, the Schoolnet group, is around leveraging the demographic dividend. As you know, India is a young country. We have demographic dividend and average age group is about 28 years. But the difficulty with our demographic dividend is that, and many of our students are poorly educated. By the time students reach the 10th grade, 60% of them drop out. Those who complete their schooling and colleges, their educational outcomes are suspect. Even if they complete, they do not have readily employable jobs. So there is a problem of the education. There is a problem with respect to the outcomes. There is a problem of employability, primarily with respect to the suitability of these youth, with respect to skills for the jobs needed, and whether enough jobs are getting created or not. So around this, we designed our intervention philosophy, what we call 3E's agenda: education, employability, and employment. Education is essentially, the objective is improving the educational outcomes using technology. And second is employability, is ensuring employability of the youth gets enhanced by way of short-term job-linked skill development programs. The third is of employment is enabling creation of additional jobs in the manufacturing sector using a clusters approach. That's how our 3E's of education, employability, and employment. Around that, to impact the demographic dividend, the youth, leveraging the demographic dividend in a positive manner has been our core philosophy.
Perfect. And talking about the first aspect of it, which is education, and like you rightly mentioned that even the learning outcomes for a country like India is a really difficult challenge to kind of map and at the end of the day bring it out as the initiative which we want for any intervention. So how is it that you approach educational initiatives and what is the model you follow and how does technology play a role in the same?
So very useful question, Deepak, in the sense right now, if you look at the pyramid of the schooling, and more than 70% of the students go to government schools and affordable private schools. And this is a section of the educational system which are in need of high quality interventions and inputs with respect to the educational outcomes oriented kind of inputs are needed. But doing it physically by way of putting supplementary teachers, by way of putting additional people on the street, in the sense additional teachers in the schools, is very laborious exercise. Therefore, using technology can be one very good solution in order to impact at scale. So what we do is that we have a variety of technology solutions for education, which includes device. We have our own patented device called Kayan. Kayan is all-in-one device, high-end computer, projector, speakers, and it converts any wall into a smart board. and the KR, and also the grade specific multimedia content, the videos and others, very grade specific NCRT and state board specific content, both in English and vernacular language, and the teacher training. So we deploy a device, we deploy the content, we deploy applications, we train the teachers, we handhold the school in terms of equipping the school teachers to teach the students difficult to learn topics using technology over a period of 5 years. So through this approach, we ensure that the school actually adopts the technology to teach the core academic subjects. And we operate in this format about 40,000 schools in India, impacting almost 1.5 crore students, teaching them English, math, science, many other difficult to learn topics. And this has been the India's largest educational edtech intervention in government schools as well as affordable private schools. This is how we actually seek to achieve the entire paradigm shift towards sustainable learning outcomes improvement using technology.
Well, that's phenomenal to hear it. And talking about the other end of the spectrum, if we talk about in terms of education, the other end is employability, which happens to be that your initiatives are one of the largest in India in terms of numbers and the impact that they've created over the years. So if you could elaborate more on the training to placement, the whole model around that, and how do you complete the cycle of employability for your beneficiaries?
Yeah. So on the employability side, what we believe is that the way just to take you back, the conversation related to education, and the metric for our impact is improved grades, improved scores, improved capacity of the teacher to teach, improved attendance, improved retention. Some of these outcomes we measure. Similarly, in employability, through skilling, the outcome metric for is the number of people whom we place in the jobs at the end of the training, and number of people who continue to be in the jobs. So again, if you look at the pyramid, population pyramid, and as I said, large number of students drop out by the time they reach 10th and 12th, and all of them are in need of jobs. Those who complete 10th and 12th also are in need of jobs, in the sense those who cannot pursue higher education, they want to get into the workforce immediately because they come from poorer sections of society. They cannot afford to be out of jobs for very long. On the other hand, if you look at the entire industry, not more than 1/3 of the jobs in any industry require a graduate and above. In other words, up to 2/3 the kind of jobs needed are, you are okay, you are 10th up to 12th standard. But what they need is the skills. So on one hand, therefore, the industry is in need of trained manpower, those minimal educated but skilled, ready to be deployed. On the other side, you have a large number of youth living below poverty line, living in rural areas, and who are largely school passouts and school dropouts, who are in need of jobs. So we started our skill development program connecting both the job seekers and job providers, and for the primarily blue collar jobs. So the model starts to begin with, we identify the sectors which are employment intensive, companies within those sectors and which are in need of jobs, the job roles within those companies where there is a larger demand. Case in point being the textile and clothing industry. Within that, the apparel industry, the one that cuts and stitches the garments, very, very labor intensive. Within that, sewing machine operator, they actually people who operate the machines are the ones who account for 70% of the shop floor people. And most of them do not require more than 10th or 12th academic qualifications. So those kind of jobs we identify, and we map the employee. We take the intent of that employer with respect to the number of people they would like to recruit, and when do they recruit, what is the salary level, all right, whether there's a hostel or not. And with this information, we go to the community. We go to the community in the areas where you have the large number of poorer section of people live. Case in point being the Odisha, Jharkhand, Bihar, many of these states, we go there, go to the community, tell them in the villages and towns, reach out to them through panchayats, through NGOs, and through government, explain to them where the jobs are available. If they are willing to undertake that job at that particular salary level, we do a sort of entry gate assessments just to assess, to match their aptitude with the job available. And if they are found to be suitable to that, then we train them, we set up the training institutes, exactly like how the industry operates. In other words, the industries in operating environment industry is simulated in the training center. You'll have like the case in point swing machine operator. We'll have 24 machines. So mini factory type we create in institute, and there is a trainer, there is equipment. We use a lot of digital content to teach. We train them exactly like the way industry trains them. And it is measured in terms of hours, like 200 hours, 300 hours, 600 hours. The duration of the program is as per the sector skills councils and their specific requirements. And end of the course, there is a third part assessment largely by the sector skills councils, and they get placed. Because we already identified where the jobs are. So entire training value chain starts with identification of jobs and complete it doesn't stop with the placements. After placing, we actually track them for about a year. If they drop out, if they have problems, assisting those youth in terms of finding another job. Through this methodology, we have trained almost 20 lakh people in India, and almost 60% of them are freshers, and 10th, 12th kind of pass, and 1/3 of them are women, and place them in industries like textiles, engineering, hospitality, healthcare, many of these industries. And remaining 40% are the upskilling. Those students and roadside, say the food vendors or auto repairs, workshop people, many of them, their skills being updated, upskilling. So both skilling as well upskilling format, about 20 lakh people we have trained and placed. And as we speak, we operate about 150 institutes through a subsidiary of Schoolnet called LearnNet, which is joint venture with NSDC. So this is again, we have been doing it almost for 15 years, and we are India's largest vocational skills provider in this space.
Perfect. And the way you explain the whole assessment that you're doing for the whole value chain instead of just picking onto one aspect of it, that I would say is pretty commendable in itself.
And then more than 75% of our students, we actually place them, and almost 2/3 of them continue to be in the jobs for more than a year, and which is very, very significant outcome the way we measure.
True. I think that is where the assessment part comes in, because you're just looking at the whole value chain instead of just picking onto one aspect and building on that. And coming to the next question of mine. So in context of the recent Atmanirbhar Bharat and its allied, I would say, models that have come up. So how is it that one of the interesting models that you follow of cluster-based approach, so how does that fit into your employability framework?
Very good question, Gaurav. In the third year, actually it fits in the third year of employment. So, almost 1 crore youth join the workforce every year, and they need jobs. And many of that workforce is the category which I talked about. So where do they actually find the jobs? Manufacturing industry could be one big employer. It could be manufacturing textiles, leather, food processing, handlooms, handicrafts. So what we do is that we pick up this manufacturing industry, which is highly employment intensive, and we organize the related industries in a value chain. You talked about value chain. Let's say the case of textiles and clothing value chain. What we do is that we identify which product has the market, let's say lingerie. And around that, what kind of industries need to be there in that value chain. It starts some company which produces yarn, another company which does the fabric, another company which does cutting and stitching, another company doing accessories. We identify these SMEs and we talk to them, convince them, why don't you come together in one geographical location, so that one's output becomes input to the other. And at the end of that chain, the finished product goes out. As a result, you have actually been able to create a value chain in which several companies operate, but they collaborate based on their common shared infrastructure requirements, while they could compete in the marketplace. So that value chain and what we call cluster is the model through which we actually enhance the competitiveness, global competitiveness of that industry. As a result of that, when the industry becomes competitive, when they're able to compete the rest of the countries and they become profitable, when they become profitable, they'll generate more jobs. That's how the employment gets. So through this concept of clusters or the parks concept, value chain based, around 100 such clusters we have assisted in setting up throughout the country, and textiles, leather, food processing, and many of these sectors, and enabling about 5 lakh jobs being created during the last 15 years. almost $5 billion investment has gone into both public and private. The user industry puts in money, government schemes, grants go in, and also the private sector, the bank loans go into that. That kind of industrial parks model we created. The largest one being in Visakhapatnam in Andhra Pradesh, where in one location there are 25,000 people are working. And Brandix India Apparel City, the largest success story in this part of the world, where all of them are involved in manufacturing the knitwear products for exports, and about 15 companies collaborate within that and supported by shared common infrastructure. And I believe this is the kind of model that we need to scale up if we have to really become self-reliant. And in the context of the call given by Honorable Prime Minister about Atmanirbhar, this becomes very, very important of creating self-sufficient and competitive supply chains, which are linked to the global supply chains, which are globally competitive and price competitive, quality competitive. And that's the model that we follow here. And it has been a tremendous success. In fact, some of the projects that where we have been involved in conceptualizing from conceptualizing to commission of the entire the supply chain parks has been phenomenal. The experience and its sustainability as opposed to the real estate driven industrial parks. Whereas here the industry is at the center of our value chain.
Indeed. And the way you passionately describe the whole process, I'm pretty sure the outcomes are as good as you explain them to be. And talking about, so like you mentioned, these investment aspect, be it the investment aspect of it, or your educational initiatives being one of the largest in the country, or even the employment ones being the largest in the country. So one question that comes to mind is that what is the structure that your organization is operating in? So largely it is in a development social sector space, but the funds that you're operating with, the kind of partnership that you're leveraging, that is more like a corporate or a private institution. So can you just elaborate on the model that you follow as an organization?
The Schoolnet India Limited is a for-profit, a social business. Okay. And one of the subsidiaries of Schoolnet India Limited is the Learned Skills Limited, which is a joint venture with NSTC, again for-profit entity. So we are for-profit, social business, but we strongly believe, reason why we are for-profit, we strongly believe, unless you are financially sustainable, you cannot scale. If you have to scale and you have to impact people at large numbers, you need to create financially sustainable models. Therefore, consciously, we chose a for-profit model. And through this, as I said, around 1.5 crore people in 200 plus districts we reach out. We employ about 10,000 people, trainers, master trainers, counselors, designers, and n number of job roles that are required to implement our 3 E's agenda. So the way we operate is that we are a full service provider, all right? From concept to commissioning, we are not just consultant. We actually execute the project. We may not be owning that particular, like when we provide the tech services in schools. Schools are government schools or private schools. We're a service provider, but the entire content to technology to everything is ours. And execution and implementation is ours. So is the case in skills. We actually operate the skill development institutes. Real estate piece may not be with us. We may have rented it out. We may have taken from the government. But the trainers, infrastructure, entire deployment is ours. And so is the case in clusters. The advisory service is ours. We actually design and hold till the project that industrial park gets completed. So we are a full-blown service provider. And from concept to commissioning we do. For doing that, there is a cost of doing it. So typically what we do when we conceptualize a project and these projects get funded by the government under relevant schemes, could be MHRD scheme for EdTech in schools. It's the Ministry of Skill Development programs for skills initiatives. Similarly, clusters, Ministry of Textiles, Food Processing, they also run clusters programs. Under that, wherever government schemes are there, government schemes are tapped into this by following appropriate process in terms of getting us qualified participating tenders. The other thing is that, which is very relevant in the context of this talk, is the corporates. We work with about 40 to 50 corporates and to assist them in implementing their CSR agenda. Because a lot of corporates want to impact the schools in terms of enabling them to do well. They want to assist the local youth to get skills and to get jobs. Some companies want to see the local women, handlooms, handicrafts clusters, they get sustainable income improvement. So these are sponsored by the corporates. In certain cases, employers, in case of skills, employers also pay for. And some of the training programs, the consumers, that is students themselves pay. So it is the government, it is the private sector, they are the sponsors, also individual beneficiaries, users. It's a mix of sponsorships that we generate to implement our programs. And in this context, this CSR of several of these corporates can be very productively deployed. Those funds can be deployed through this 3S agenda, because we created not only this platform, we also have a not-for-profit entity called Seeds Impact, because some of the corporates want to work with the not-for-profits. We have a foundation called Seeds Impact, and which has been working again with the corporates, and a lot of the multinationals and big corporates work through this NGO as well. So that's how we created the structure.
Great. And now coming to the end of the conversation. So the current pandemic has pushed a lot of organizations to rethinking their structure in terms of going online as a model. So how is it that your organization is looking at going online in terms of its initiatives? And what would be some of the future themes or areas that you would be looking to work into?
So you're very right. The trend is today, everything is online, digital, all right? And we strongly believe that pure digital may not work in the areas that we operate. That being working with the students and teachers to improve the overall efficiency of teaching learning system in government and private schools. Case in point, youth being taught on welding, electrical engineering, sewing machine operator skills, which require a lot of hands-on, all right? So not every area in which we are operating is amenable for pure digital delivery. And at the same time, if you are dependent only on physical, you cannot scale up. Therefore, we came up with this model of a blended model, what we call physical, largely digital initiative supported by physical operations. Case in point, recently we launched an initiative, pravasirozgar.com, which is now renamed as Good Worker, in partnership with Sonu Sood, the actor who has helped a lot of people during the migrant crisis, and Temasek funded entity called Affinity, Temasek Government of Singapore Sovereign Fund. Three of us came together, set up a venture called Good Worker, primarily to develop and operate a job matching platform for the blue collar workers. Job seekers on one side, job providers on one side, companies, and there is intelligent algorithm that actually matches the interest of the job seekers with the jobs that are there on the platform. Within 3 months of launch, you'll be happy to know we have around a million job seekers, almost same number of jobs on that. So, but this alone, once the job matches, how does a person in Odisha, tribal area, and will be in a position to go and access this job? That is where the physical part comes. Through our institutes there, we reach out to the families, we counsel them, we explain to them if that girl requires skilling is delivered in our institute. So that is what the physical part of it. And digital is the entire job matching, upskilling, and CV generation, verifiable credentials getting created. All this stuff is done digital. So that's one story that we created, pravasirozgar.com, the physical model. Second one that we are working on is again blended for the K-12, for the schools, called Geneo. Geneo, G-E-N-E-O, Geneo is again for the schools, K-12. It's a learning app and mapped to the NCERT framework and supported by the teachers, a very intelligent way of book and supported by digital content, highly personalized to each individual learner, and supported by teachers who are virtual teachers, because we work with about 500,000 teachers through our educational initiatives, and these teachers acting as mentors. This again has been launched, and around 3 lakh users are there on that platform. And again, that's what I call the blended model. So we believe going forward, the way for the best appropriate model given India's context is always a blended, a physical model. And that is how we believe we will be in a position to scale up our initiatives, at the same time without losing the focus on impact that comes by way of facilitation and personal engagement. So that's the way we have chalked out going forward.
True. And that brings us to the close of the conversation. And thank you, Mr. Reddy, for this insightful and highly, I would say, nuanced conversation that we just had. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Deepak. All the best to you and CSR Box.
Anyway, thank you so much.